Para dar apertura formal a este encuentro, brindamos un especial agradecimiento a los miembros de nuestro círculo élite de patrocinadores, compuesto por Bepensa Coca-Cola, Clara Dominicana, City, Jaina International Terminals, Martí, Barrick Pueblo Viejo, Humanos Seguros, Square Patton Box, Pasteurizadora Rica, Inicia, Grupo Punta Cana, Grupo Peña de Filló. De inmediato les exhortamos a compartir su experiencia de la tarde mediante las redes sociales y utilizando el hashtag Perspectivas. Y por esa vía continuaremos la conversación de esta actividad. Sin más que agregar, recibimos al vicepresidente ejecutivo de la Cámara Americana de Comercio de la República Dominicana, señor William Malamud, quien nos tiene unas breves palabras de introducción.
Bueno, distinguidos miembros de la mesa principal, estimados miembros del gobierno y cuerpo diplomático, miembros de la prensa y medios de comunicación, damas y caballeros, apreciados socios, muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos a este almuerzo mensual de la Cámara Americana de Comercio de la República Dominicana. El año pasado, la República Dominicana les dio la bienvenida a más de 6.5 millones de turistas. Y el sector de turismo creció a un ritmo de 5.2%, representando 17% del Producto Interno Bruto y sustentando cientos de miles de trabajos directos e indirectos. Sin alguna duda, el sector de turismo es uno de los principales pilares de la economía dominicana y la envidia de la región. Su éxito es el resultado de la visión y pasión de empresarios locales y extranjeros y de gobiernos sucesivos que han trabajado muy de cerca con el sector privado para atraer y retener la inversión privada. El sector turístico es bastante competitivo en los mercados internacionales y a la misma vez vulnerable a cambios en el interno externo. Por ende, hoy queremos enfocar en lo que está pasando a nivel regional en turismo y cuáles son los retos y oportunidades que debemos enfrentar. Somos sumamente afortunados de tener con nosotros dos oradores de primer nivel para compartir sus perspectivas. Frank Comito, CEO y director general de la Asociación Turística de Hoteles del Caribe, quien hablará sobre tendencias y prospectos en el turismo de la región, y Paola Rainieri, presidenta de la Asociación de Hoteles y Turismo de la República Dominicana, Asonahores, quien va a aterrizar en lo que está pasando localmente. Entonces, hoy tienen 2 por 1, agregando valor para ustedes. Nuestro programa en el día de hoy es presentación de la mesa principal, seguido inmediatamente por el almuerzo, y después del almuerzo, nuestro presidente Ramón Ortega va a presentar más formalmente a nuestros dos invitados. Y después de las exponencias, vamos a tomar preguntas de ustedes en el público. Hay una app y el QR code está allá, y si no se puede desfrizar el app, todavía hay formularios en papel que puede llenar. Entonces, sin más preámbulo, con la mesa principal, a mi mano izquierda, Carlos José Martí, director de nuestro consejo y CEO de Grupo Martí. Luis Welmont, directora de nuestro consejo y vicepresidente de Dominican Watchman. Fernando Villanueva, director de nuestro consejo y presidente del Grupo Villamar. Edwin de los Santos, nuestro tesorero y presidente de AES Dominicana. Pedro Brache, presidente del Consejo Nacional de la Empresa Privada, CONEP. Señor Frank Comito, orador invitado y huésped de honor, CEO y director general del Caribbean Hotel y Tourism Association. Ramón Ortega, presidente de nuestra Cámara y socio líder de impuestos y legal de PricewaterhouseCoopers. Paola Rainieri, nuestra otra oradora invitada y presidente de Asonahores. Francesca Rainieri, directora del Consejo de nosotros y vicepresidenta del Grupo Punta Cana. María Waleska Álvarez, directora de nuestro consejo y presidenta del NAP del Caribe, Alexander Shad, director de nuestro consejo y presidente de Frederick Shad, y Juan Velázquez, director de nuestro consejo y vicepresidente de Central Romana Corporation. Muchísimas gracias y buen provecho.
De inmediato invitamos a asumir este podio a nuestro presidente del Consejo Directivo de la Cámara Americana de Comercio, señor Ramón Ortega, quien nos introducirá esta actividad. Escuchemos.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Antes de iniciar con mis palabras, he acordado con Paola, que nos conocemos desde hace bastante tiempo y que le tenemos mucho cariño, que una labor que nos corresponde como Cámara y también en lo personal, que ella se quede esa noticia y ella lo va a hacer y ha cedido a hacerlo por nosotros, lo cual empiezo dándote las gracias, Paola. Estimado Frank Comito, CEO y director general de la Asociación Turística de Hoteles del Caribe, nuestro orador y huésped de honor en el almuerzo de hoy. Estimada Paola Rainieri, presidenta de la Asociación de Hoteles y Turismo de la República Dominicana, Asonahores. Distinguido Pedro Brache, presidente del Consejo Nacional de Hombres de Empresas, CONEP. Estimados miembros del Consejo de Directores, pasados presidentes de ANCHAN, autoridades, ejecutivos, miembros de la Cámara, representantes diplomáticos, representantes de los medios de comunicación, amigos todos. Muy buenas tardes. La República Dominicana es un país privilegiado. Es un país situado, como diría nuestro poeta Pedro Mir, en el mismo trayecto del Sol, bordeado por una increíble diversidad geográfica que la convierte en el destino vacacional predilecto del Caribe. Cuando se lanzó la campaña turística República Dominicana lo tiene todo, captó mi atención cómo la idea buscaba englobar toda la variedad paisajística de playas de aguas cristalinas, montañas fértiles, bosques tropicales y asombrosos recursos naturales que tenemos en nuestros 48.000 kilómetros cuadrados aproximadamente. La fortuna que hemos tenido como país va más allá de nuestra belleza natural. En los últimos 50 años, la República Dominicana ha sido la economía de mayor crecimiento en América Latina. El año pasado superamos a Guatemala y nos colocamos como la 8ª economía más grande de la región. Todo esto ha sido posible gracias a 2 pilares que han fundamentado nuestro éxito. La estabilidad sociopolítica, cuando se compara con otros países de la región, y la estabilidad macroeconómica, que ha mantenido en las últimas 2 décadas una inflación relativamente baja y una tasa de cambio previsible. Mientras otras naciones de América Latina han sufrido inestabilidad a nivel interno con patrones cíclicos de crecimiento de los precios de los productos básicos, República Dominicana ha mantenido una inversión privada y un crecimiento sostenido, especialmente en sus zonas de libre comercio y el sector turístico. Cuando miramos otros países de la región y del mundo, encontramos que hay un número creciente de movimientos populistas que desafían el status quo y crean inestabilidad e incertidumbre, y hay países que podemos citar como Ecuador, Chile, Perú, Bolivia, Brasil, El Salvador y Guatemala, que están en esta dimensión. Bajo estas condiciones, no debería sorprendernos que su inversión privada y la actividad económica en general hayan desacelerado. Hasta ahora, nuestro país ha mantenido la estabilidad sociopolítica y macroeconómica, pero han comenzado a crecer las tensiones a medida que entramos en un año electoral y frente a una economía global en desaceleración. Ante esta situación, se hace necesario que los sectores públicos y privados trabajemos juntos para apoyar y fortalecer las instituciones democráticas que son críticas para mantener la estabilidad sociopolítica que ha servido de base para nuestro crecimiento sostenido y la prosperidad. Además, es importante que prioricemos la corrección de información errónea que se ha divulgado en ciertos medios sobre la seguridad de los turística en la República Dominicana y que defendamos nuestra reputación como destino turístico seguro y protegido. Damas y caballeros, es en este contexto que me complace en presentarles nuestros oradores invitados del día de hoy, que nos ayudarán a entender las tendencias del mercado turístico del Caribe. Principalmente tenemos a Frank Comito, al cual agradecemos su presencia, que es el CEO y director general de la Asociación Turística de Hoteles del Caribe, y hoy compartirá con nosotros las perspectivas del turismo, tendencias que afectan la economía global, el Caribe y la República Dominicana. Comito cuenta con más de 30 años de experiencia en desarrollo económico y gestión de proyectos turísticos. Además, ha apoyado a empresas e inversores en las Bahamas, Islas Vírgenes, Estados Unidos y el Caribe. Y para profundizar la discusión en un contexto local, nos honrará con una intervención especial la señora Paola Rainieri, que es presidenta de la Asociación de Hoteles y Turismos de la República Dominicana. Rainieri es vicepresidente senior de Marketing, Relaciones Públicas y Comunicaciones del Grupo Punta Cana, donde participa en los ejercicios de planificación estratégica para apoyar la estrategia de responsabilidad social corporativa y cultura corporativa de la organización. Agradecemos a Paola y al señor Frank Comito por honrarnos con su presencia en esta tarde, y sin más preámbulos, le cedo el podio a Paola Rainieri, presidenta de Asonahores. Muchas gracias, señores.
Al iniciar este almuerzo, algunos miembros de la mesa directiva de AmCham se acercaron al señor Ramón Ortega, al igual que yo, para solicitarle que honráramos hoy, por un momento, la memoria de un estimado miembro de AmCham, un hombre trabajador, un hombre con un gran sentido de la responsabilidad social, una persona de fe, una persona de familia, un hombre serio, un hombre que merece que lo honremos. Y queríamos pedirle, por eso, un minuto de silencio para Alejandro Farage. Gracias. Señores, buenas tardes. Ya sí. Agradezco la invitación que me hacen hoy. Quiero hacer ese agradecimiento primero a la directiva de AmCham y a ustedes todos, amigos. Esta gentil invitación es importante para mí y la tomaré para hacer algunas reflexiones sobre la industria turística nacional. Dadas las preocupaciones generadas a raíz de recientes acontecimientos que han afectado la imagen de nuestro país como destino turístico, iniciaré indicando que la actividad turística mundial ha probado que supera con rapidez los efectos de las catástrofes naturales, conflictos o situaciones de crisis de la economía mundial. Pese al daño que se ha hecho a nuestra imagen como destino, estamos seguros de que recuperaremos el dinamismo que ha caracterizado el sector. El optimismo que nos anima no es idealista, porque somos el destino más seguro del Caribe, y las cifras así lo demuestran. Lo sustenta también la calidad alcanzada por nuestra oferta turística, en su aceptación en los diferentes mercados en los que competimos y, por supuesto, en nuestro más valioso intangible, la calidez del dominicano. El optimismo que se sustenta también en el aliento y el apoyo recibido de nuestra comunidad política y empresarial durante los embates mediáticos, el liderazgo político con el presidente de la República a la cabeza y a todas las fuerzas políticas de la nación, han sido unánimes en reprobar el fenómeno mediático. Nuestros colegas empresarios, individualmente y a través de los gremios empresariales, han dado un respaldo firme, mereciendo mención especial esta Cámara Americana de Comercio y la embajadora de los Estados Unidos en la República Dominicana. Pasando a la dinámica de nuestro sector turismo, un rápido recuento nos muestra que en el ranking de la Organización Internacional de Turismo, OMT, que incluye 220 países y territorios, en el 2018 la República Dominicana ocupó la posición número 50 por llegadas de turistas y la número 41 por los ingresos generados por la actividad turística. En el ámbito regional, tomando a Centroamérica y al Caribe, donde competimos con 37 destinos, ocupamos la primera posición en llegada de turistas, ingresos de divisas y oferta de calidad mundial. De 25.8 millones de turistas llegados al Caribe en el 2018, el 25% visitó la República Dominicana. En el 2018, las llegadas aumentaron un 5,4% a escala mundial. En América crecieron un 2,3% y en el Caribe decrecieron un 1%. Sin embargo, en República Dominicana aumentaron un 6,2%. Generalmente, nuestro crecimiento turístico supera el que se registra a escala mundial y regional. Permítanme hacer un recuento de los últimos 18 años del comportamiento de las llegadas de turistas y los ingresos, dos indicadores fundamentales. En el periodo 2000 al 2010, las llegadas de turistas crecieron en 1 millón, con un incremento anual de un promedio de 4,3%. Y en los años 2010-2018, el aumento fue de 2 millones de turistas, para un promedio de 7,4%, perdón. Estos números superan el crecimiento reportado a escala mundial y regional y muestran claramente el dinamismo de nuestro sector. Durante años hemos concitado la admiración de los países hermanos de la región, convirtiendo la República Dominicana en un atractivo destino en el que crece de manera firme la inversión extranjera directa en el turismo. En estos momentos contamos con más de 5.400 habitaciones hoteleras en construcción y que abrirán sus puertas en los próximos 18 meses. Este historial de éxito no es una casualidad y no tengo dudas de afirmar que constituye una sólida plataforma para seguir adelante, a pesar de que navegamos en un entorno internacional complicado y de que hayamos enfrentado circunstancias adversas en mercados específicos, provocado por situaciones circunstanciales magnificadas y presentadas en estilo sensacionalista, a pesar de que, como se ha demostrado, no tienen fundamento. La industria turística a escala mundial ha mostrado gran resiliencia, esa capacidad de adaptarse a los cambios y superar los obstáculos, propia también del desarrollo turístico dominicano. Por ejemplo, en nuestro caso, superamos el impacto negativo de la Primera Guerra del Golfo y la operación Tormenta del Desierto en 1990, el ataque de las Torres Gemelas de Nueva York en el 2001 y la crisis con el mercado inglés en el 2005, y los efectos de la caída en nuestros principales mercados emisores en el 2008 y 2009. Creo firmemente que las dificultades de estos días son pasajeras y nos dejarán fortalecidos como sector y como país. La rápida recuperación de situaciones críticas en años recientes fue posible y lo será nuevamente, porque tenemos una buena plataforma y porque hicimos correctamente la tarea. Con esta reflexión, no pretendo negar que tenemos una agenda con importantes asuntos pendientes, porque en turismo la tarea nunca termina y para competir la renovación debe ser constante y continua. En la industria turística no existen zonas de confort porque es un sector en el que el cambio es permanente. ¿Qué hacer? Esa es la pregunta presente, en especial en momentos particularmente difíciles como este, como los que hoy atravesamos. En Asonahores estamos enfocados en lo siguiente: coordinar respuestas con el Gobierno y el Ministerio de Turismo, y señalo expresamente dos sujetos diferenciados, porque turismo somos todos y hay tareas que involucran a diferentes áreas del Gobierno. La creación de un comité de manejo de crisis dentro de Asonahores para mejorar la capacidad de respuestas a eventos como los ocurridos. Establecer canales de comunicación directos y compartir información con otras entidades. Desde Asonahores estamos dando el apoyo logístico y económico a las autoridades para elevar la calidad de las infraestructuras y servicios y procesos de atención al turista. La incorporación de tecnología de primera para ofrecer seguridad perimetral en la zona turística y urbana de Verón, iniciativa que el sector privado realiza conjuntamente con CESTUR y el programa 911. Continuamos empujando los temas pendientes en el sector, como el ordenamiento territorial turístico, los programas de desarrollo de infraestructura, la adecuación de las regulaciones más importantes que deben ser actualizadas y la colección de proyectos de ley que cursan en el Congreso y afectan al sector, entre muchos otros. En el Consejo Nacional de Competitividad haremos énfasis en producir una revisión detallada de los factores que determinan la competitividad del turismo, tomando como base informes independientes como el reporte anual del Foro Económico Mundial. Ahora bien, todas estas acciones son complementarias a la acción central que hemos emprendido y que hoy me complace anunciar. Asonahores, acogiendo una iniciativa de sus socios inversores, hoteleros agrupados en Inverhotel y de inversión local, ha creado un fondo de promoción turística para la ejecución de un programa de promoción de los destinos del este del país, que complemente las acciones de promoción ya en marcha que ejecuta el Ministerio de Turismo y que permita reposicionar el producto turístico dominicano para lograr su pronta recuperación. Este fondo, con una meta inicial de $5 millones, o sea, etapa 1, tiene ya recursos comprometidos por $3 millones del sector privado. Asonahores, digo, un aplauso ahí, $3 millones del sector privado. Gracias. Asonahores ayudará también a estructurar iniciativas como esta para las demás regiones turísticas interesadas. Es un momento para acelerar el paso en la agenda turística y evitar que la agenda política en marcha nos paralice. Estamos conscientes de lo que significa la industria turística para la economía dominicana y no escatimamos esfuerzos para revertir los impactos negativos circunstanciales y fortalecer la competitividad del producto turístico dominicano. Sabemos por experiencia que si cuesta mucho llegar a la cima, es mayor aún el esfuerzo necesario para mantenerse. Somos un sector privado comprometido y estamos dispuestos a hacer la tarea. Asonahores y en todo el sector turístico estamos conscientes de nuestra responsabilidad para con el país y lo estamos asumiendo. Agradecemos a todos los dominicanos por su apoyo y colaboración durante todo este proceso. Los hechos han demostrado que este país necesita del turismo y vive del turismo, porque todos somos turismo. Gracias.
Tras la interesante ponencia de la señora Paola Rainieri de Díaz, invitamos a asumir este podio al señor Frank Comito para conversarnos desde su perspectiva internacional.
Thank you so much, Paola. That was a great setup for me. And hopefully I can put a few numbers and some stats and information behind that to make it work. Protocol has been established. I want to thank the AmCham DR for inviting me to be here. I cut my teeth in this whole business on chambers of commerce. I was a volunteer at the age of 23 for our local chamber of commerce and got involved on a special project, which 2 years later led to them hiring me to run several special projects, which 3 years after that led to me being the executive director for a small chamber of commerce in St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands, which also allowed me to go to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Institute for Organization Management for training on organization management for several years. So what really grabbed my attention, though, at 23 years old was the power to convene and affect change that an institution that I had never even heard of, even through college business training and so on, that these chambers of commerce do and what they affect. And it's the same with Asonahores, it's the same with the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association, whatever your interest, it could be Rotary or whatever, we affect change. All too often we wait for governments to affect change. It's us that can affect change in a very effective way, and these vehicles like AmCham DR and Asonahores are great for being able to facilitate that. So the power is really in the people, isn't it? So I'm going to come down a little bit so I can see some of my slides because I'm getting old, but, and I was also told that I have the Punta Cana attire on today, so okay. So I wanted to be compatible with my good friend Frank Rainieri, who's been a mentor and a guide for all too many of us in the Caribbean. And tourism would not be where it's at, not only in Punta Cana, but in our entire region without the kind of leadership and insight that he's provided. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk very briefly, I'm going to talk fast, by the way, about CTHA. We're going to talk about the tourism economic landscape, some key challenges that we're facing, some of them that Paola brought forward, about development and growth opportunities, and then if we have enough time, we'll do some Q&A. So a little bit about us very briefly. We're an association of associations. We're a federation of 33 national hotel and tourism associations throughout the Caribbean basin. We just added Cartagena as a new associate member, federation member this year. We're also membership driven. I mean, all of those associations are members, but also we have individual members, the chains, the brands, independent hotels, and so on, over 500 of those, as well as nearly 400 allied member companies, as well as affiliations with all the public and private sector organizations throughout the region as well. That's our ecosystem. We work at the global as well as the regional level. We have connectivity and partnerships with groups like the World Travel and Tourism Council and some of those that are mentioned right here on this slide. So that's in our focus, our leadership. I'd like to acknowledge one of our vice presidents with us today, Alberto, and also our former past president, two of them in here, right here, right? Enrique and Simone. And Simone is also the 2017 Caribbean Hotelier of the Year as well. So we operate on 6 key objective areas: capacity building, and I like to call that informally the shift happens kind of area, because things happen all the time and we have to be able to deal with, situation management in that area. But capacity building, regional marketing, sustainable growth, national support for their federation and operations and governments. And there's a whole bunch of stuff behind all of that, but I'm not going to get into that today. That's not our purpose. So the tourism landscape in the DR, if you can see some of that, I've just put a couple of the indicators in there. It kind of reinforces what Paola was saying. Between 1990 and 2018, it's an incredible story. I think it's one of the hemisphere's great economic and socioeconomic development stories, what has happened in this country. And a lot of it's been driven by tourism as you start mining it and looking at it. The indicator, the GDP per capita PPP, has grown from $9.5 billion to 17.9, I'm sorry, the average income, per capita income, $3,500 to $17,799. Tourism employment has grown, what, 8, 16, 29, 18, 20, threefold, basically, as you can see right there. Conversely, what's happened is the unemployment rate has dropped from 9.5% to 5.8%. Tourism arrivals have just mushroomed more than we've seen in terms of growth anywhere in the Caribbean, 1.3 million to 6.5 million last year. And export revenues, and this is a lesson for a lot of folks that don't know this. I had to actually give this lesson to U.S. Department of Commerce officials who didn't understand. I asked them in a meeting in Washington a few years ago, I said, what's the biggest export for the Caribbean? And they kept saying, well, rum, and they kept saying, you know, mining, kinds of things. The biggest export for the Caribbean is tourism. It's export dollars, and it's got to be looked at like that. All too often, we don't even put it in there. It's not even in most of the figures and facts. So tourism export revenues for the DR, by the way, total DR export revenues, if I got my number right, you can help me, William, is $9.5 billion. Is that about right? Exports, without tourism. Right, of goods. And that's in tourism, it's $7.4 billion. So you could take the top 10 exports out of the DR globally, and they don't equate to what tourism does in terms of export revenue. I'm not saying it's everything, but it's an added important part of the economy that we all too often ignore in what it does to our economy as well. So if you look at how the dollar circulates around, basically from the top there, the tourist brings the dollar in a couple of ways, and then that circulates around and it hits every aspect of it. Do we have an egg producer in the room? I bet you're selling a whole lot less eggs in the past 4 months than you sold before that, right? I bet you're seeing a whole lot new trailers of goods coming in to the ports because tourism is down. So what's the consequence of that? On the negative side, it's less employment, less tax revenue, and so on. On the positive side, as you've grown in development, as we saw earlier, it stimulates economic activity, and it moves all around. I could probably, I don't know what number you use here, but I could take a dollar out of your pocket right now and say, hey, every dollar in your pocket, what is it, 20, 25% with the multiplier here? Domino effect on it, came from a tourist. I don't care where you're at. You got it in your pocket right now. That came from a tourist. It's pervasive. And we've got to understand that. And our policymakers have to understand that as well, because all too often they ignore it to their own peril, the peril of government revenue and so on. Our schools, everything that we do, our roads, our infrastructure, it's all tied to being able to leverage what happens to tourism to do that better. And if you look at tourism, I mean, basically, it's the region's biggest driver for employment, economic activity, foreign exchange, and tax revenue. And you can see the breakdown with some select countries right in there and how important it is, particularly in some of these countries. Your growth has outpaced the Caribbean's growth by far. On the left side there, you'll see basically the chart there. It's a little hazy, but I'll describe it to you. That green line basically shows growth in tourism performance of the U.S. market for the Caribbean versus for the entire Caribbean and then the DR. Look how you've outpaced what's going on throughout the whole region. And similar on the other side, you see what Cuba's done as well versus the CARICOM countries. So it's been quite a ride that you've been on. Globally, though, our market share as a region is dwindling. We used to be almost 3% of the global market share of visitor arrivals. This year, we will actually slip below 2%. Why does that happen? And then why is that important to us? It's because this whole game is changing dramatically right now. Asia and Pacific is the biggest growth area for tourism. We want to capture more parts of the market. We got to understand that there's more opportunities and choices for people at even better prices than what the Caribbean offers. And we're seeing a similar type of thing starting to emerge in South America as well. So it's a different kind of market share, and we've got to be on our game to be able to continue to grow and develop it. And you can see the annual average tourism growth there as well is what's happening that way. So we're still a major global player and will continue to be that way, but we've got to recognize we've got to continue to adapt and modify at multiple levels to be able to be competitive. Tourism is the world's, right now, it's the world's largest industry. It's 10% of global GDP contribution, 319 million jobs, and last year, 1 in 5 new jobs were created in travel tourism. I mean, last year, over the past 5 years, 1 in 5 new jobs were created by travel and tourism. It outpaced last year every sector in growth and development in the world except manufacturing, including healthcare and things like that we think are growing faster than tourism. So tourism contributes, let's see how basically in the Caribbean, basically, it's about $6.2 billion in total GDP contribution, 15%. In the next, that's going to increase by 17.8% projected in the next 9 years. Employment total, we expect to add 600,000 more jobs in the Caribbean through tourism, and visitor exports will continue to grow. All of this according to the World Travel and Tourism Council. It's the most tourism-dependent region in the world. So if you look at the top 10 on GDP in the region, basically 6 of the top 10 are Caribbean nations. If you look at it basically in terms of employment, 8 of the top 10 are in the Caribbean. So we are pretty well dependent on this, but we're also, I like to use the word, Paola, resilient. We're incredibly resilient. So things happen, but we tend to rebound faster than we realize. Tourism's total contribution to GDP, basically you see it there in the British Virgin Islands, it's over 90%. So some of these areas really, when they get walloped with a hurricane or something like that, it's absolutely devastating. In the performance last year, we had about, in the region, what we call stopover or overnight visitors, just about 30 million, a slight drop, as you indicated, whereas the DR went up, the region went down. Most of that, almost all of that, was related to 6 destinations that were severely impacted by the 2017 hurricanes. But other than that, we had been on an 8-year run of increased arrivals. And then you can see almost an equal amount in cruise or visitor arrivals, and then the total air capacity, almost all of that, I mean 60+% of that all is coming from the US. Internationally, when you look at tourist visits in 2019, for the first quarter of 2019, basically we're seeing tourist arrivals in the Caribbean expanded by 12% versus other areas of the world. So our first quarter of this year, I would venture to say it was the best first quarter that we've ever had in the tourism industry in the Caribbean. But that started changing as well. So let's look a little bit about occupancy, hotel indicators, key hotel indicators, and I'll share with you what some of them are. One is supply. We look at supply. So our supply in the region last year basically went up, well, the first 7-8 months of this year through August, the supply was up 2.8%. Demand, though, went down by 0.1%. Our occupancy went down as a region as well by 2 points, a little over 2 points. What we call is our ADR, our average daily room rate. That's good news, actually. It did increase quite a bit, 7.8%. Where the most important indicator that hoteliers like to look at is called RevPAR, revenue per available room. The RevPAR basically went up as well, and total revenue, which is really pretty key, went up 7.9%. So we're off to a great start in the aggregate of the Caribbean through August of this year. But we also have had mixed pockets. I'll just show you a little bit about 2017 versus 2018. I think the thing I want to point out here is the DR is basically a little bit towards off to the center to the right there. It's basically showing that your occupancy, your room occupancy in 2017 versus 2018 was one of the highest in the region. I think Cayman might have beat you. No, it wasn't Cayman, it was Aruba. Aruba beat you on that. And Jamaica slightly ahead. But Puerto Rico basically running Dominican Republic basically running 73.2% on occupancy. Incredible, that's great performance. Okay, so, but when we start looking a little differently though, and I think this is an area of caution for the region, particularly with what's going on right now, some of the things that you're experiencing, If you look at your average daily rate, one of the lowest, it is the lowest in the region. And then if you look at your RevPAR on the next slide, again, one of the lowest in the region. Now that's fine if you do volume, but if you're looking at a situation right now where you got to get you got to get control of that volume of business that you need to generate, then that becomes a very serious concern for the destination and for tax revenue for the government as well. So the Caribbean, basically, the first quarter of this year, as I indicated, and even through August, in its aggregate, has done fairly well, much better than other parts of the world, actually. So we've had a good hotel performance in its totality this year so far. And we've had more hotels join, more destinations join what we call the 70% club, which you're already in, where your average annual occupancy is trending above 70%, which is very good for the industry if your rate's good. But let's look at some key hotel-related KPIs for the DR versus the Caribbean. Basically, through September, this is through the end of just a couple of weeks ago. STR, Smith Travel Research, pulls this data together. And for the Caribbean, you look at occupancy is starting to trend down a little bit, slightly. But the good news for the Caribbean as a whole is that our ADR and our RevPAR and our rooms revenue as a region is going up. That's really positive. But a little caution here with the DR. What we're seeing basically is occupancy is down almost 7 points. We're seeing that the ADR is down 1.9. The RevPAR, so important to hotel profitability, is down 8.7%. And room revenue is down 6.99%. That's in the aggregate, that's the totality from January to now. But if I took a microscope and then looked at what's happened since June, it would be even more stark and dramatic. Now, I don't think it's reason to panic, by the way. I think it's reason to be concerned. Let's just a little bit wrap up on 2019 on hotel performance, Q2 and Q3. Signs of a slowdown in pace of arrivals and hotel KPIs. Half of the regions basically reporting arrivals and hotel KPI growth, half down, mostly marginal. Industry new hires and investments in capital improvements and upgrades continue. Over 25,000 new hotel rooms for the Caribbean are on the books. About 50% of those will become reality. But in reality, nearly half of those are in the DR, and with almost half of those projected to open in 2019, I believe it was, about 5,000 rooms. The 2017 hurricanes impacted 6 destinations, and they're all ahead of pace on recovery, which is great news. It gets back to this sense of resiliency. Despite what people think sometimes, tourism is incredibly resilient and bounces back fairly quickly. So the region's largest markets, though, this year, DR and Mexican Caribbean, see Q3 declines, largely attributed to sargassum in the Mexican Caribbean and the media scare in the DR. Keep an eye on those DR arrivals. Accumulated arrivals of non-resident passengers between January and September, between 2016 and 2019. I'm looking more at 2018 and 2019. You're down a bit over 100,000 right now. Almost all of that on what's happened in the past 3-4 months. So let's look a little bit at global, regional, and destination external threats and internal challenges and a few lessons learned in the process. External challenges for all of us in the region is competition, global, sectoral. Right now we've got alternative accommodations which didn't exist 8 years ago in the way they exist now. We've got cruise industry is projected to grow their capacity by almost 50% into the region just over the next couple of years. Where are those berths going to go? Is it going to create overcrowding and planning kinds of compromises and issues? And we're having globalization and consolidation. It started back in the 80s with the airlines consolidating, and that continued. We saw it with tour operators and the consolidation of that. We saw it with the cruise industry, with the consolidation of that. And what we've seen remarkably in the past 8, 10 years is consolidation with the brands, the hotel brands, where you know, you should have stayed with Hilton, man. You would have been really, no, just, okay, no, but they're gobbling up everything, and that's good, and it's also bad, because our independents are really, they in the region, our independent hotels are really special, and they offer some great stuff. How can they compete with the volume purchasing, the volume marketing, and the economies of scale that the brands can do? That remains an issue for us to look at as we're going ahead, but it is happening. Environmentally, we have some external challenges that are absolutely frightening if we don't get a grip on it and use the power of the collective of 20 to 30 Caribbean nations that have a voice in the global community, as I pointed out a couple of weeks ago at a conference in Jamaica. Climate change, extreme hurricanes, droughts, natural disasters, sea level rise, sargassum. These are issues that are hitting us right in the face, and we've got to be more consolidated and collaborative in how we address them. Health threats like Zika, dengue, nobody heard of Zika 5, 6 years ago. I mean, and there's going to be other Zikas appear. I mean, it's just going to happen. So we've got to know that these things happen, and some of those other kinds of challenges that we face. Misinformation, global economics, misinformation and communication. I mean, it's the media and the social media causing us incredible challenges right now, and how do we rethink our crisis management and response types of efforts? And then geographic ignorance, and I'll talk about that in a second. I think it's a challenge for us, it's controllable. But we talk about resiliency. On these next 3 slides, I'll go through them real quick. We basically took a look at visitor arrival impacts when there's a recession, major hurricanes, a crisis like a Zika or whatever, what happens? And you can see the fluctuations and how sensitive our industry is to these kinds of fluctuations, but you also see here very clearly how quickly we rebound. We come back quickly. Occupancy, the same thing. But what you're seeing, particularly with occupancy at RevPAR, you're seeing since 2004 that the bar has been raised. That we're, even though we're impacted, we come back and we're continuing that trend line of growth and development for the industry, which is positive and encouraging. Our internal challenges, growth opportunities rely around improving our public relations as destinations, as companies, as a region, our communications and media relations, regulating, taxing, and engaging vacation home rentals. I'm going to talk about that in a second. The marketing our destination and destinations and our diverse offerings. You don't do enough of that here. There's so much more that DR offers, and the world doesn't know about it. And there's so many opportunities to do that more effectively. Increasing visitor spending and business profitability, managing growth, airlift, greater access, lower fares. There's been progress in all of these areas in recent years, but we can do so much more, and that helps all of us. Human resource development, building the capacity of our people more effectively, strengthening our public and private sector collaboration. It's not working the way it needs to work. I mean, we've improved the awareness and the understanding of tourism in my time at a regional level as well, with heads of government and so on, but it's still not where it needs to be. There's still a lot of misunderstanding about our industry, and building stronger regional ties. Crisis, I'm going to take 3 of those and just hone in on them a little bit, just for some lessons learned and some shared perspectives. Comprehensive crisis communications plans are essential for a destination. I know this personally, having been through, I think it's 16 hurricanes and major tropical storms in the Bahamas, where I was co-chair of the tourism crisis communications crisis initiative for what we called our National Emergency Management Agency with my counterpart in the Ministry of Tourism. And we had to deal with this stuff in multiple ways. And it wasn't just hurricanes, it was any kind of crisis. It could be what you've gone through. There's all kinds of ways you can be broadsided with a crisis. But the overarching goal must be with a plan that's developed collaboratively with all stakeholders represented. If it's done in isolation by the Ministry of Tourism or by the industry, you're going to fail because you're not connecting all the dots. I have a saying I like to say that if they help to write it, they'll underwrite it, and that's so critical to a process. The government has to be open, as the private sector, to an engaging process to touch on this, because it affects foreign affairs, it affects police, it affects the Defense Force, it affects Ministry of Tourism, obviously, all of these areas of government that have to be part of it, and the private sector and the broader NGO community. So it's more important to have that stakeholder representation in developing it in a comprehensive way, not just for hurricanes, but for any type of crisis situation. We had to draw on that many years ago in the Bahamas with our folks, and it helped quite a bit. But I also learned that with Dorian, just a couple of months ago, even though I'm not on the ground in the Bahamas anymore, but where we need to revisit our plan in the Bahamas as well is on the social media part of it, because that's the biggest killer. And if you look at what's affected you, a lot of it was seeded through misinformation in the social media that lazy reporters caught a hold of and didn't do their investigative research to be able to figure out what the real facts were. And that had multiple ramifications on an entire economy and people's lives and livelihoods. That's irresponsible. We got a job to make it responsible. So overarching goals of the plan must be to prevent a bad situation from getting worse, to protect our residents, to protect our visitors, to minimize the economic impact, and to protect the integrity and image and brand of the destination. I'm going to point to a couple of best and worst case scenarios. Let's look at, how many in here remember the St. Croix Fountain Valley incident in 1972? How many were born before 19? Okay. So, horrible situation. I inherited it 10 years later when I was in the Virgin Islands, basically. But nature of the crime, there were 8 people massacred on a golf course. Half of them were I think 4 of them were tourists and the others were residents. No crisis communication strategy in place. The destination was unable to manage messaging. The media led the messaging. We didn't even have social media in those days. Consequences, occupancies dropped from the mid-60s to the 20 percentiles. They stayed that way for almost 10 years. The economy was devastated. If not for an oil refinery there, it would have been just a ghost town, basically. So, lessons learned. Needs to be quick response on these kinds of things. Let's look at how many people remember Legionnaire's disease, or where it got his, Jesus, just Frank and Heidi that keep raising their hands. I'm sorry. Okay, but it's basically the Bellevue Stratford Hotel in Philadelphia. It's a grand old hotel, one of the greats, and this disease came out of nowhere, and it killed 29 people and led to 100 illnesses. There was no coordinated communication strategy to counter the daily negative news coverage. Consequences, occupancy plummeted to 4%, forcing bankruptcy and closure within 6 months. They reopened 3 years later as a Fairmont, which divested itself several years later. The hotel underwent several owner and brand changes, with the Hyatt, its latest brand, which just last year dropped its chain name and moved it into their Unbound collection. The property has never recovered from its stigma. The Natalie Holloway murder, closer to home, in Aruba, 2005. How many remember that? Okay. We're getting to the younger folks now. Okay. By the way, if I say it at some point and you can't remember it, you know you're in real trouble. Okay. So, barrage of negatives, and by the way, Nancy, I used to call her in those days Nancy Disgrace on CNN, because I thought she was doing a disgrace to the public, the way she just hitchhiked onto that situation and didn't let go. But there was a barrage of negative, sensationalized media coverage, which prompted in part, and I think this is a lesson for DR as well, by suspicion that the Aruban police and authorities were not fully transparent and that a cover-up was taking place. Too many spokespersons, they didn't have any single coordinated way to communicate messaging, and uncoordinated, the negative publicity lasted for several years. The consequence contributed to a 2-year decline in visitor arrivals and hotel performance, with rate and occupancy slightly reduced. After 2 years, performance returned to its pre-situation trend line. Why? Because the situation was mitigated in part due to the proactive promotional work They got together, public and private sectors. There was a fund by the public sector, money by the private, a fund by the private sector, money by the public sector. You guys are doing that right now. It would have been great to have it mobilized a little earlier than it is right now. But basically, they mitigated the situation, and they returned to their pre-Natalie Holloway trend line within 2 years and started to rebound. They also held our largest, we do the largest B2B event for tourism in the region. They also held the largest Caribbean, we call it CTM, Caribbean Travel Marketplace, which again puts some positive highlight on the destination and helped them to climb out of that hole that they were in. Let's look at the Las Vegas mass shootings in 2017. How many people remember that? Okay. I wish we didn't have to remember that. But 57 killed, over 400 injured in sniper shooting on Las Vegas Strip from the Mandalay Bay Hotel. Industries, public, I've sat down with these people because I was intrigued by it, with the Las Vegas Convention Center folks and their PR people. And what they did was amazing. They had a comprehensive crisis communications strategy in place. They mobilized it. That, at whatever it was, 1 o'clock in the morning, she told me, she was out there, they were pulling all the stakeholders together. I think the incident happened around 11 o'clock at night or something like that. And they were in gear. They had a plan. She said they had just rehearsed it a couple of months earlier, so it was fresh in everybody's minds. All the stakeholders were on board, and they mobilized very quickly, gathered the facts as quickly as they could, communicated the facts, were transparent, open, accessible to the media, and proactive, multiple channel communications were organized. Social media was monitored constantly, and they had a team that was doing nothing but responding to things on social media that were out there and putting the facts straight, or setting the right kind of tenor, basically. Arrivals and occupancy and gaming spending declined for 6 months, attributed in part to the shooting. There was a 4% drop in tourism revenues. The industry returned to pre-incident trend line after 6 months. Let's look a little bit at what happened in 2017 with the hurricanes. How am I doing with time, by the way? Because I can skip this one if I have to. Try to wrap up. Okay. So there's a whole thing in here. I'm going to share this, and you can get it. It'll be available. So this part right here, but there's some great stuff here on what happened with the hurricanes as well, and the contagion effect of that. And my only lesson with these couple of slides, I'm going to skip over them, is that we're all in this boat together. When something affects one part of the region, there's a contagion effect. Americans don't understand the geography, in particular, of our region, that you can basically be on the beach in Miami Beach and there's a blizzard in New York, that you can have a hurricane in one part of the region and 90% of the Caribbean is fine. So there's a lot of lessons learned in that, and there's a lot of good data on that. I'm going to skip over it in the interest of time, and it's available. I think it's all clear for you, basically, and how we mitigated that at our level as well. Some of the things we did that affected and helped the DR and other unaffected areas. We had to get communications and messaging out there, the facts, the right information out there, and did a pretty strong job at trying to do that. Montego Bay in Jamaica, state of emergency due to crime in January 2018 to January 2019. The destination challenge: avoid perception that the entire country was unsafe, and as initial media reports were indicating this, and negative social media reports were helping to further fuel it. I think it's a great job what they did in Jamaica last year. They could have been really wiped out with that negative publicity. They hit it head on right away. Immediate and proactive multi-pronged marketing and communications initiative put in place to counter negative perceptions. Public and private sectors together swiftly allocated funds. They got a supplemental in the budget. I think the government in Jamaican dollars was $100 million, which I don't know what it is right now, but I think it was about $15 million US. They were able to put together in a fund. It was leveraged with the private sector as well. The minister and others got out there, media events, roadshow presentations, all speaking from the same tune, true and transparent message. They didn't walk away from it. They hit it head on, and they said, "This is what we're doing to make it better, and everything's fine in our hotels and so on." And they also didn't back away from hosting Caribbean Travel Marketplace, that event that we do. That's my plug for Marketplace. I'd love to bring it back to the DR. Basically, they basically got that thing going, and a year later, at Caribbean Travel Marketplace this past January, they announced that the emergency had been lifted, and they also announced that they had a record number of percentage in increased earnings in tourism that same year that they had a crisis situation. Tourism earnings went up 8.6% last year. Our region's other area that I want to focus on, a challenge for all of us, is the vacation home rental industry. Real quick, vacation home rentals, you know, it's a consumer-driven industry. It's actually, in many ways, a great opportunity if it can be managed and better channeled and taxed as well. Destination issues, reputational issues can surface. It's not an even playing field. You've got, as I'll show you in a second, a real opportunity here to grow even more. Opportunities present, the good positive side, it presents opportunity for local ownership. It captures new markets. There's a market that's attracted to this that we wouldn't get otherwise likely. An opportunity to strengthen linkages in community tourism, and an opportunity for hotels. By the way, the first Caribbean Airbnb hotel is in the planning stages right now. It's going to be a Caribbean Airbnb hotel. That's in the works. The hotelier who I sat down with on it, he owns 7 other hotels in the Caribbean, said, Frank, if you can't beat them, join them. And that's what he's doing. So an opportunity for our hoteliers to adapt, recognizing the shifts going on in that market. It should be understood, but while there are upsides to that market, the economic impact of a visitor staying in a sharing economy accommodation is far below that of a hotel stay. Governments need to understand that. They can't turn their back on hotels just because we've got this other opportunity. Per visitor spending is estimated at 1/4. Tax revenue realized is far lower. Multiplier effect is far lower. Significant difference in employment that's generated. Word of caution to governments, don't jeopardize the hotel sector for these guys as well. Caribbean governments are beginning to tax and regulate this growing accommodation sector, and Airbnb, HomeAway, VBRO, they're working with them. They're helping to collect the taxes for the government. They're a little resistant on the standards that we want to put in, we would like them to put in place, added standards, but they are working with them. We did a survey in 2018 that revealed 9 destinations were moving to tax and or regulate this sector. And destinations with tax and or regulations in effect right now include Belize, Cayman Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands. You have 15,000 of these vacation home rentals in the DR today. 15,000. With a total guest capacity of 87,000, total bedrooms of 36,000. That's what's your total room inventory right now? Almost 80,000, okay? So, and with an average daily rate of $313. That's the entire DR. This is a breakdown for Santo Domingo area, and this is a breakdown for Punta Cana. I'm not going to get into details, but I want to point this out to you. So what's the lost revenue opportunity by government for not taxing these accommodations? And by the way, if they can't collect that tax and they need tax revenue, who are they going to go to? Assuming, I'm being very conservative here, assuming 15,235 properties or 10% with a 10% annual occupancy rate, extremely conservative. They don't approach the 70% that you're at, but their occupancy rates can be 25% in a good destination. But we're going to assume 10%. And an average daily rate of $200, conservative, taking out the commission that Airbnb gets and just saying, well, let's just take it down a little bit for the sake of the argument. That's 1,524 occupied rooms per night. That's 566,000 annually occupied room nights. That's $111 million in annual accommodations revenue times your 18% tax. The government is letting sit on the table a minimum of $20 million in potential tax revenue. It might cost at best $1 million to put the support infrastructure in place to be able to collect that. Don't you think it's time for a policy change? How profitable is, and finally I'm just wrapping up on profitability, how profitable is a typical Caribbean hotel? Net profits are, we do an annual survey, net profits are estimated at at 80%. That means that not everybody in the business is making a profit. You can't see this, but basically this shows about a 300-room hotel, same accounting systems with a brand that basically has operations throughout the Caribbean, and you look at their net profit, their annual gross profit margin. In the DR, it's about 37%. In the US, that same thing is running about 45%. Elsewhere in the Caribbean, it's running even lower. It's a challenge in our region. That's why we can't compromise rates. We've got to generate volume in order to make up the difference, because globally we're not as competitive as we need to be. I'm not going to go into that. World's changing rapidly. I really liked what I saw and what you sent me about AmCham, that one of your core philosophies is coordination and collaboration. That is so critical. Going forward, it's really important hearing, we've got to work together. It's absolutely critical. Stakeholders need to work together to be able to affect change. And in the interest of time, 2 more slides here. Our challenges aside, tourism has brought us economic development and growth, direct and indirect through linkages, investments in infrastructure and accommodations and new products that all of us can use and benefit from it, expanded and more affordable airlift, education and training investments supporting mass uplifting of our people, enlightenment and broader awareness and acceptance of different people, languages, and culture. So there's so many other benefits to this industry. Improved standards of quality and quality of services and products, diversification of our products, new and expanded locally owned businesses tied to tourism, an opportunity to showcase to the masses the qualities of our country, people, culture, and history. Our industry's accomplishments are incredible, thanks to many of you in this room. Just imagine what more can be done. Thank you. Okay, yeah, sure. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Frank Comito, for that tour de force on tourism in the Caribbean. We have time for a couple questions, and then we'll let you go. The first here, I guess it's to both of you. On the issue of pre-clearance, there's other destinations in the region that have pre-clearance. What has been the impact for them? And then for Paola, what might be the impact here, and where are we in that?
You want me to start? Or?
Sure.
I can give you a pre-clearance perspective because we have it in the Bahamas. It costs us money, but boy, is it worth it. One of the biggest challenges for aircraft going into the States is getting a slot. It's difficult to get an international slot. It's much easier to get a domestic slot. So if you're part of pre-clearance, your plane leaves here, it can go to any airport in the United States as a direct flight. Your connectivity is enhanced, your ability to get customer satisfaction is enhanced, your ability to attract new markets and develop new markets is enhanced. It costs us $30 million a year to have pre-clearance in the Bahamas, and it is far worth it.
Español, perdón. Sí, ya iba a contestar en inglés. A diferencia de Bahamas, a la República Dominicana no le costaría, al gobierno de la República Dominicana y a la República Dominicana como tal, no le costaría un centavo. Eso lo cubriría de forma privada la empresa que es propietaria del Aeropuerto Internacional de Punta Cana o el aeropuerto a quien también se le conceda, porque es algo que concede el gobierno norteamericano, es algo que te ganas por por cumplir con los estándares que exige el gobierno norteamericano y el CBP para esta operación. Deberíamos sentirnos honrados de que fuimos seleccionados cuando aplicamos, que fuimos aceptados, porque no todos los países lo son. Otros países de primer mundo, muchos otros lo han solicitado también, y es una ventaja competitiva para el país, porque abre nuevos mercados que, como bien decía Frank, podrían volar de forma directa sin hacer el proceso de aduana una vez llegues al país de destino, sino que la haces previamente antes de salir, haciendo los procesos mucho más rápidos, eficientes y fáciles para el viajante. No solo, en un momento como este, debo agregar que sería de vital importancia para darle ese último empujón a que los números, las cifras de turistas que vengan al país, pues regresen a los lugares donde estuvieron hasta el verano. Y el proceso está bastante adelantado, quedaría que sea aprobado por el Tribunal Constitucional de la República Dominicana.
Gracias. Frank, it's rumored that there's a trade war going on between the United States and China. Are there any elements in the value chain of tourism that are being impacted by the trade war?
Thank you. After Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, there was a major hotel, a landmark hotel, that had to do a major restoration. And the GM and I are very close, and he said we're doing $80 million worth of, $85 million worth of restoration. They were well underway. They had all their contracts in place. The trade war resulted in tens of millions of dollars in added cost for all the fixtures and everything that they had coming in from China on that hotel development. They went through with it, but their payback period is enhanced and their vulnerability is enhanced as well as a result of it. So yeah, I mean, I can attest to one situation on a major refurbishment, and we're doing a lot of refurbishments in the Caribbean right now with hotels, and it added significantly to the cost, and it wasn't planned for.
And I guess a final question to both of you, the issue of multiple destination tourism, marketing the region as a destination, and the issue of visas. You know, every country requiring a visa. What are the prospects for? How much of a disincentive is that for travel when you have to get these multiple visas? And what prospects are there for some type of a collaboration between the countries in the region?
I mean, the good news is we've been seeing, a lot more relaxation of visa requirements throughout the entire region with the global community, and that's important. That makes it so much easier. I believe there are hub opportunities for the Punta Cana airport, in particular because of its international connectivity, more than I think any other airport in the region, to be able to be a hub and spoke into areas of the region more effectively than it is now, and it's not just about visas. I mean, that's part of it, but it's also about getting much faster movement. There's 9 Caribbean countries have signed on to an open skies agreement called MASA for the Caribbean thus far. They all need to, and the more we can overcome those kinds of hurdles, concurrently continue to see how we can relax more of the visa requirements, I think we'll do fine. But we've had some great movement in that area in recent years.
Concuerdo con Frank, es algo que venimos hablando, de hecho, desde hace años. Es un sueño poder hacer o lograr que se abran los cielos entre el Open Sky, entre las diferentes islas. Como bien decía él también, sí se ha relajado mucho el proceso de visado, pero sería pues lograr un entendimiento entre las islas para hacer también un hub, porque necesitamos una línea aérea que nos dé esa conexión que no existe hoy necesariamente, entre isla e isla, de forma tal que el visitante, en vez de pasarse quizás 4 días en República Dominicana, pues se pase 4 días en República Dominicana, 2 en Puerto Rico, 3 en Antigua, por decirte algo, y que pueda hacer algo como lo que hace la gente cuando va a Europa, que se pasa 15 días y va de lugar en lugar y disfruta de diferentes opciones. Sería un multidestino y abriría probablemente la puerta a la República Dominicana también de un mercado nuevo que quizás no había pensado en venir solo a la República Dominicana, pero que pudiendo hacer un viaje multidestino, pues le sería mucho más atractivo.
Muy bien, bueno, un aplauso para nuestros dos oradores. Gracias, Frank, Comito. Thanks for sharing your regional perspective. Y bueno, a Paola Rainieri, muchísimas gracias. Felicidades por la creación de este fondo de promoción y cuenta con esta Cámara en colaborar con ustedes en la promoción de República Dominicana como un destino turístico. Gracias a todos ustedes y muy buenas tardes.